Calling center. Please have your passcode and conference leader's name of it.
Thank you for calling. May I have your passcode, please?
Yes, it is 9793554.
Okay, and may I have your first and last name?
Damon Knight.
How do you spell your first name?
Damon. Then my last name, K as in Knight, Knight.
Thank you. And then what is your affiliation?
Just here for the consultation, for the tribal trust funds.
Okay. I will join you to the call. Please stand by.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I am Mdewakanton Sioux, lineal descendant of the lower Mississippi Sioux, Eastern Dakota, descendant of Daryl Cermak, Milo Cermak, John Cermak, Margaret Moran, Angelina, Grandma Angelina, Grandpa Tamaha.
Please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session. To ask a question, please press star then 1 and state your name when prompted. Today's conference is also being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to your host, Jerry Digner. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you all are. I am Jerry Digner. I'm the Principal Deputy Special Trustee for the Office of the Special Trustee for American Indians, and currently the Acting Special Trustee. And today's consultation is a follow-up to a series of consultations that the department held through the fall of 2016 regarding several issues required by the Indian Trust Asset Reform Act. So today we'd like to talk about our proposal to transition the OST from the Office of the Secretary of Interior to be under the jurisdiction of the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. So at the consultations last year, we heard a number of options. Leave OST intact where it is, break it up and move the functions to different parts of the department, move it intact into BIA proper, move it under the Assistant Secretary's office. There's a few others. One was to put it under the Undersecretary of Indian Affairs, which was allowed by ATARA, but has not been decided to make a Undersecretary a position. So after looking at the comments and the transcripts, we have decided to propose moving OST under the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. So I want to clarify that. It is not to put it within BIA proper. It would be a third organization reporting to the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. So there would be the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Bureau of Indian Education, and the Office of the Special Trustee. We would envision that it would become a permanent organization. Probably as most of you know, the 1994 Trust Reform Act included a termination or sunset provision for the Office of the Special Trustee, as it was envisioned working on trust reform and oversight. In the intervening years, however, operational functions of accounting management and records, etc., have been added to OST, and those functions need to continue on a daily basis. So our proposal is to move OST almost intact, and I'll explain that in a second, to underneath the Assistant Secretary of Affairs, and at some point it become a permanent organization. The almost intact part is we have also proposed, and we're required by ATARA to have the appraisal functions within a single entity. So we have proposed, and it's moving on a different track, to combine OST's Office of Appraisal Services with the Office of Valuation Services and the Department of the Interior. And that would create a new Office of Appraisal, and I think it's Appraisal and Valuation Service Office. But other than appraisals moving out, the remainder of OST under our proposal would move under the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs as it is right now. So rather than say any more about that, that's the gist of the plan. I would at this time propose to hear your comments or questions. I guess I should talk about the process going forward. We'll be having another consultation session tomorrow morning. It'll be identical to this one. We will maintain a comment period until January 15th, I believe it is. After that point, we'll review the comments that come in, any comments made on the consultations today and tomorrow, and decide based on that if we need to amend the plan. But at that point, the ATARA plan, the draft of which we're consulting on today, we will send to both the authorizing side of Congress as well as a reprogramming letter, if needed, to the appropriation side, and let them review those documents and hopefully approve them at that point. Following that congressional review period, whatever we finally implement would be done via a secretarial order signed by Secretary Sinke. So with that process add on, we'll open the lines to comments.
Thank you. If you'd like to comment at this time, please press star 1 and state your name when prompted. If you wish to withdraw from the queue, you may press star 2. Again, if you would like to make a comment, please press star 1.
After the tone, please state your name and company, followed by the pound sign.
I am Mdewakanton Sioux from Minnesota. My name is Damon Knight.
Thank you.
One moment. Damon Knight, your line is open.
Hello, this is Damon Knight. I'm coming from Minnesota. I'm a lineal descendant of a role that the Secretary of Interior prepared in 1972, as they call it, the lineal descendants of the Mdewakanton Wapakude. Also a descendant of some Lake Pepin land relinquishment in the 1800s. So I'm just curious. We've never had our judgment funds awards fully paid out. We got 2 docket payments recently, just this year, of docket 363, an interest payment in 1981. Just curious how we as a people can, create economic opportunity for ourselves, for our state, and for our country, for these judgment funds to be distributed throughout the lineal descendants. And I also would like to know about titles of land and compensation for titles of land that were ceded at a time open for settlement. My grandmother had 400 acres, and I would look for compensation for those lands. So that's my comment for today. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next comment comes from Brian Gunn. Your line is open.
Good morning. This is Janet Nicholson. I wanted to provide comments on behalf of the Confederated Tribes of Colville Reservation. I see, based on the ITARA report and what's been presented, is that it's proposed that the OST be moved from the Office of the Secretary to Asia as an office equal to BIA and BIA Education. I believe the Colville tribe and the tribes in the Northwest across the country would be more agreeable to the Office of Special Trustee to be moved under the Office of the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, and that the duplicate services that are provided within the Office of Special Trustee could then be transitioned out and under the services already provided within the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That would make funds available where they were originally taken from, such as our real property offices, our forestry departments, our range departments. I think that would be a better use of the money of actual FTEs. I believe that the superintendent authority, the regional director authority, they are all delegated with approving all the trust transactions that generate the money, and they actually do the approval of all the financial documents for OST to process. I believe the Office of Trust Funds Management should remain intact, with one exception, that the fiduciary trust officers that were developed to be the front line in answering questions in related to the management of natural resources, that is not done at a great majority, and they basically do follow-up of what the financial trust accountants do. it's the superintendent that is the frontline officer that responds to all questions in relation to the management of natural resources or all the financial transactions. I believe the Office of the Special Trustee provides the backup, but they do not have the final authority. So I believe that we could sunset the fiduciary trust officers at the GS-14, approximately 50 positions that would be transitioned over to realty specialists, foresters, range cons. Also, at the same time, the GS-14 deputy superintendents also were created during the evolution of the Office of Special Trustee. I believe there are more of those in BIA, but that would be a separate discussion. I believe that the actual review and processing of the trust transaction at the field level is done by the financial accounts managers and the accounting techs and the trust beneficiary call centers. So the fiduciary trust officer basically is a moot position. That would be the position I believe the tribes would take. And I also believe that the regional trust administrators is a duplicate of the services provided by the regional directors. So that would be the comments that we would make. We would also provide more explicit written comments of the duplicate services that could be sunsetted within the organization of the Office of Special Trustee. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing those written comments.
The next comment comes from Daniel Jordan. Your line is open.
Thank you. I'm from the Hoopa Valley Tribe in Northern California. We also worked with the Colville, as just the comments were just made, and other Northwest tribes to develop ITARA. The Department of Interior is taking cherry-picking ITARA apart, and it can't be done that way. And that's one of the reasons why OST has not accomplished what it was expecting to be accomplished, because it did cherry-pick things, as was just explained by the Colville representative. Now, the Office of Special Trustee was never intended in the original authorization to run trust programs. We're supposed to provide oversight. By it becoming a trust manager, it became in conflict with the very law that created it. And likewise, when we developed ITARA, the Title I, Title II, Title III are all part of a package. What we're doing here is cherry-picking just the OST part out of Title III. There are other agencies involved with Title III as well, but there's also the parts of Title II, which are the demonstration projects, which are intended to get to what the previous commenter was talking about. We need to reform not just trust asset management, but we also need to reform and update the relationship between Indian tribes and the United States. That's what ITARA is designed to do. So with this case, now that we will be submitting written comments as well. Our comments are 4 parts. One is the Office of Special Trustee OTFM, which we believe needs to be kept intact. The second part will be on the Office of Special Trustee Trust Asset Management, which they have never had expertise to carry out. And that's where a lot of OST's failures are, in really those programs that they assumed control over, but never had the expertise to manage. The third part of our comments are going to be on the other agencies, the other trust relationships that are in Title III, Bureau of Reclamation, for example. And the fourth part is the demonstration projects themselves. We're really disappointed that the department has not seen an interest in anything other than that really cherry-picked part of OST of the ITARA law. There's a tremendous opportunity for tribes and the federal government to work out long-standing differences if we were to work together. But we can't just simply isolate and protect one part of the federal interest, which is OST. The comment about OST itself, the Office of Special Trustee in a trust asset management has been a subject of Inspector General ethics violation, 96 of them, which is an average of one per month for over 8 years. And it demonstrates that OST doesn't have the internal expertise to even oversee the trust asset functions.
Yes.
When Office of Special Trustee assumed the responsibilities of the Office of American Indian Trust, which was an agency set up to oversee trust management conflicts between federal agencies and other and Indian Trust, Office of Special Trustee just basically gutted that whole function. So we are now sitting here in Indian country where things like direct conflicts with ESA, direct conflicts with water issues, direct conflicts with trespass issues. Of course, the probate issues ought to be, we had to talk about that, moving to a partnership with tribes on how to deal with probates, fractionated heirship. But again, OST has set aside too much of the trust asset management functions and simply stopped working on them. So we need to not just cherry pick and figure out how to protect the OST structure, but look at how it is actually working with the department and with the tribes on figuring out how to make trust improvements. That has just never been OST's. OST has never accepted that level of responsibility, but that's exactly what the Self-Determination Act and self-governance laws are about, is creating partnerships. OST has simply been unwilling to work with tribes in developing those kind of things, and in fact has stopped a lot of the work that we were working on to make those partnership connections between the United States and Indian tribes. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much.
The next comment comes from Lisa Coop. Your line is open.
Hi, as stated, my name is Lisa Coop, and I'm with the Tulalip tribe. Just sort of piggyback on some of the comments that have already been made. Tulalip has great concerns with leaving OST intact or almost intact. The intent of the applicable provision in ITARA was to improve efficiency and cut the cost of OST and to reduce duplicative functions. And moving OST as it is, even with the exception of the appraisal function being removed, does not do this. So Tulalip Tribes does not support the current plan as proposed, and we will be submitting detailed comments by the deadline.
Thank you very much.
Currently, there are no callers in queue. To comment, please press *1.
After the tone, please state your name and company, followed by the pound sign.
I am Mdewakanton Sioux, representing the Lower Mississippi Sioux lineal descendants. My name is Damon Knight.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Goodner. This is Tara Branson from Muskogee Creek Nation. How are you?
Good. I'm just trying to get as much information as I can.
Oh, sorry. I actually just had a series of questions. Muskogee Creek Nation supports many of the comments that have already been made. We're very concerned that the proposal that the department put forward doesn't actually reflect the consensus of tribes, and in reviewing the written comments and some of the transcripts from tribal consultation, it doesn't appear to really reflect those comments either. So we're a little concerned that the proposal put forward doesn't really reflect national consensus. But in the spirit of consultation, I have some questions. You talked a little bit about moving the Office of Evaluation Services and how that's on a different track. Do you have an idea of when those services will be transferred to the new entity within DOI that's going to be performing those functions?
I don't, actually. We just met yesterday with staff from the appropriations subcommittees, and they have to approve a reprogramming letter, and they had some questions for us, and some concerns about whether we should do additional consultation on that particular issue. So there is a statutory deadline of December 22nd, but pretty sure we're not going to meet that. But so we're having discussions with the appropriations committee. That the next step is for them to approve our reprogramming, if that's what they're going to do, and then there'd be a secretarial order. So I think even if they approved it right away, we're still talking a couple months, I think, and maybe longer than that.
Okay, that kind of leads me to my next question. I was curious if you had talked with Congress about the proposal that you're putting forward for consultation, and if you've received any initial feedback, and how it might actually align with the requirements of the 1994 Act that position, the special trustee, be an appointee who reports directly to the secretary under 25 U.S.C. 4042A and B. So I was just wondering if you all have considered that, given the proposal that you put forward.
Well, we have considered that. I guess a better word is we're trying to negotiate between two statutes. So we have not formally shared our plan with Congress yet, because we wanted to do this consultation first and be able to tell them that whatever plan we're proposing has had this consultation process. So we're doing this first, and then after the comment period, we'll regroup and see if we need to make any amendments based on the comments, and then we'll be submitting the ATARA plan to them.
Okay, that's great. And just one last question. I guess in reviewing the proposal, we had a number of thoughts that we'll kind of put down in writing. But one that kind of stuck out was that was the Executive Order 13781. Obviously, ITAR, predates the executive order, but I think it's important for OSD and the department to consider how this move will sort of be impacted later on if there are changes within the department. I know it's a priority of Secretary Zinke's to reorganize the department and to provide other efficiencies. So I would just be curious if you know of any other discussions about how this particular proposal would support or correlate with other proposals that are being made internally under that executive order.
I have not seen that discussion particularly. The Secretary is inviting a group of senior executives to D.C. in January to talk more specifically about his larger reorganization plans. Some of us from the Office of Special Trustee have been invited to that, so we'll participate in whatever that is. But I have not been part of any discussions and talking about how that larger reorganization proposals would affect this. So I really have nothing I can say about that at the moment, because I just don't know.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate your patience. Very helpful.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
The next question comes from Tyrell Stevenson. Your line is open.
Thank you. I am Tyrell Stevenson. I'm the Legislative Director for the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, and I bring greetings and apologies from Vice Chair Ernie Stensgaard. Fortunately, he was very ill this morning and was unable to join the call, but I am prepared to offer a couple of comments on his behalf and on behalf of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. First, as to the proposed department should not only consult, but consult meaningfully. And meaningful consultation involves actually considering what the tribes are saying. And I haven't heard a comment from a tribe that supports this change. I think that simply moving the entire operation underneath this assistant secretary seeks to sidestep the letter and the force of the TARA. Again, we will be submitting further comments in written form, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Mary Pavel. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. Jerry, this is Mary Pavel on behalf of the Fort Peck Tribes. I want to echo the comments that I've heard so far. I did dial in a little late, but was able to hear Tara and Coeur d'Alene's comments. And, you know, kind of as a, you know, when I was, it appears to me what I always feared a TARA might be is that the agency is gonna is presuming that this is just a moving of the deck chairs around, and that certainly I know from numerous conversations with people like Ernie Stensgaard and others, that's not the objective. The objective was really to restore accountability back certainly into offices and to create seamless access to both capacity and workload within the department. I'm trying to understand how that's going to be accomplished here. As I worked really hard to try to understand the intent of ITORA, and that was really to achieve meaningful action and representation, I think, by tribal programs on the ground and tribal those who work the hardest to protect tribal assets, trust assets. So I don't know if you guys, how is this just not moving the deck chairs around, I guess is my question.
Well, thanks, Mary. Well, we think that having OST under the assistant secretary, under the other Indian programs, makes it easier for us to coordinate with them. That's not to say we don't. Obviously, we're on a daily basis coordinating with BIA and other parts of the assistant secretary's office. But still, as opposed to us being in the secretary's office, having this under Asia makes that a little bit easier. And I did not mention this before, but I guess one of the major reasons for not having it back in BIA is just the internal control functions. And I felt this when I was the director of the BIA, and I feel this now as the principal deputy special trustee, that you ought to have a different organization managing the land than the organization that manages the money coming from the land. I think of that lack of internal control that led to some of the problems that led to the Cobell lawsuit, and I think having those be a different organization gives a great independence that lets us manage the money independent from decisions that might affect the land. And just from an internal government accounting and auditing, and we have a lot of people looking at our books and making sure we're doing things right. That's really a huge issue for us, and which I neglected to mention at the start of the discussion.
I mean, what measure, I mean, I appreciate, and I think that if it worked as well as you kind of talk about how you guys communicate, we may not have needed TARA as it was articulated to me, because I asked this a lot when I was up on the Hill, like, what do we need to do this for? What are we doing? Why are, it looks, what kind of controls are going to be put in place so there is this kind of seamless, I don't know, removal of some barriers, because obviously when people have their sandbox, they don't want other people playing in their sandbox, and that was creating enormous conflicts, whether it was in the place, and kind of the appraisal and valuation sandbox. I think is what I heard a lot about when I was up on the Hill from people who were advocating for this legislation, and that those were happening and those were a different sandbox. And so how is this process going to achieve the objective of ATARA of kind of breaking some of those barriers to people playing in one another's sandboxes, I guess, lack of a better word. A lot of analogies there.
Well, I'm not sure that was how we read ATARA necessarily. Obviously, the issue of sunsetting OST has been hanging out there for a long time. So that's something both the Trust Reform Act and ATARA talk about. The functions have to continue. We have to continue managing the money on a daily basis. I'm not quite sure how else to answer that, Mary. And we have to do these operational functions, which were added to OST after it was created, but they still have to continue. So it's this balance between where do you put those functions in the department while still maintaining a separation between the land management and the money management. So our thought was that let's put it under the assistant secretary, so it's really part of, more closely aligned with the Indian bureaus, yet still separate organizationally from the land managers.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Damon Knight, your line is open.
Hi, yes, this is Damon Knight. I'm Mdewakanton, Sioux. Like I was listening to the Northern Californian tribe member, he was talking a little bit about something similar I didn't throw in with my first comment, because when Indian Claims Commission for where I'm from in Minnesota, at the time it was the Secretary of Interior who had the authority to carry out any provision of paying any judgment docket fund, and with the tribal governing bodies recommendation. So as we're trying to, the SOT just recently, like I said, paid another interest payment. So obviously this is the department that tribal funds come from, because we got a payment in 1981 and in just recently 2017, and I'm referring to docket 359 through 363. Is docket funds controlled by the office of SOT? That's my question. Like, how are tribes members from these census rolls, how are we supposed to get the money and we're not federally recognized? And when I speak on the phone with the OST, they said we need to be federally recognized to be able to utilize the judgment fund award accounts. So my question is, with the assistant secretary underneath Ryan Zinke, is he going to carry out the provisions for such things, or is that still OST's jurisdiction and authority?
Well, thank you. I mean, OST manages the money for income generated from lands owned but funds that various kinds, water settlements that Congress says OST should manage. So we manage those things that are within our jurisdiction, and if there's other things outside of that, that's up to Congress to tell us to manage them or not.
Okay, just from hearing that, for Congress to, what I believe Congress gave, the Secretary of Interior made a plan for Congress, and Congress threw the authority back to the Department of Interior for this distribution of judgment funds for Mississippi Sioux tribes, 1972 distribution authority. With that being said, this is from treaty lands, is like the Royce areas. So if we wanted to utilize these unpaid docket, these judgment fund awards, and spend the money back into the United States economy, I'm just curious, this consultation, I'm not sure if they'll be able to tell me how to be able to do that, because we just get 2 interest payments, and there's these accounts that are here that the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community attempted to distribute in 1991, Prairie Island as well, Indian community, and Lower Sioux Indian community. They were never able to distribute those funds based on them not being on the 1972 list. So the judgment fund awards, I'm just curious, does one still have to go through these tribal governing bodies, or can I go through the office of SOT? And how to do that?
I will have to admit I don't know the details of that settlement or how it was or is being
similar to Cobell.
I'll have to find out the answer to that question.
Thank you. And I also written in my response, maybe I sent it maybe about a week and a half ago with these acts of Congress and everything attached. So, just to make that clear. And, I know that what struck this curiosity is that when we got this check recently, it was the SOT on it. So that made tribal lineal descendants figure out that the Secretary of Interior is not distributing the money, it is this department. So this is why I'm here today, and I appreciate your concern of looking into this issue. This is a lot of money in an account. There was in 1967, Indian Claims Commission said it was a little over $6 million. So with interest and investment and so forth, we don't even know what is there, but we know it's there. So thank you for your time, and appreciate to be here.
Thank you, and we did receive your written comments, so we have those in hand.
Thank you.
The next caller, Daniel Jordan, your line is open.
Thank you. I just called in because I didn't know how long this call was gonna last. I made comments before. My comment is that one, I question the transparency of OST receiving comments and developing recommendations on tribal comments that are intended to reorganize OST. I don't think OST is the proper agency to conduct these consultations about itself, or even to make recommendations about itself. You can make recommendations, but you should not be running this consultation. Second issue is that, as typical with OST, I think your understanding about what caused Cobell is really way too superficial. And the OST has designed itself where it is a liability protector to the United States against Indian tribes and Indian people. We need to change that attitude, because the United States has a trust obligation to Indian tribes, and in many ways, OST's attitude toward Indian country, toward tribes, and even Indian people, and the design of fractionated leadership plans, those kind of things, our solution to them, really is in almost direct conflict with self-determination, self-governance, and in fact, Title II of ITARA. because that's what we were just reaching for, is to get to your questions about how does the United States hold a trust responsibility for financial management and also hold the trust responsibility for asset management in the same, under the same or similar standards. That's what this law is all about. So my real question is when are we going to get to the point where the Department of Interior is going to consult with Indian tribes on ITARA, not just OST, because the other parts of ITARA are critically important to designing this trust relationship. And if you actually look at Indian country and how that has evolved over the last 20 years, there have been many, many trust improvements made, but they weren't because of the BIA. They weren't certainly because of OST, but in fact they were developed because tribes developed the expertise and define those management plans and help partner with the United States because both self-determination and self-governance say trust responsibility is still kept with the United States. So we help define that. And by doing that, we actually reduce the liabilities. But OST is sitting in its own independent vacuum world, saying that everything about tribes is a liability, so therefore we must restrict them, or we must control them, or we must put some kind of rules on them. It's not going to work this way. And even if this plan is put forward, we're still going to be talking to Congress. We're still going to be talking to the Secretary about one of the comments that were made about streamlining, the President's executive order of streamlining. Those are important issues to Indian country. And if OST is not looking at their future plans in light of where we are going in Indian country with partnerships with Indian tribes and with federal streamlining, then the OST plan is really short-lived because it will never be in sync with what tribes are expecting, what Indian people are expecting, or what Congress and the administration is expecting. I want to make sure that at one point we've got to deal with probates and fractionated dictatorships. We've made many proposals to the department and to OST about how to deal with fractionated dictatorship and probates, but we never get anything back. Again, Title II is an important part of the future of Indian country. OST, it would help OST to spend some time looking at how to create partnerships instead of thinking the tribes are simply liabilities that the United States must be protected from. I encourage you to have real consultation with Indian country about ITARA, not just the OST part, because you're not talking about anything big enough to deal with what we're dealing with Indian country, or how we restructure BIA, or how we deal with the presidential executive order on streamlining. We're doing all that stuff. You guys are just not working with us on it. So I encourage you to really go out to Indian country and talk to tribal people and Indian people about the ways to improve the trust asset management, as opposed to creating barriers against U.S. liabilities. That's my comment.
Thank you. And I would like to say I understand that BIA is expecting to start Title II of ITARA in the next year. And I would very much like to hear your ideas on land fractionization. We have a lot of IAM accounts that we manage, and I think they're just going to grow into the future, and it is a very big issue for us. So I would love to have that discussion with you at some point. Thank you.
The next comment comes from Brian Gunn. Your line is open.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks for the other folks on the call. My name is Brian Gunn. I worked with a number of the tribes that have commented on the call already, drafting Title III of the law and the rest of the ITARA law. I just have a few comments to make as folks move forward.
I guess first with respect to the intent of the law, Title III was really intended to lay a groundwork for what a transition of OST into the rest of the department would look like. The law required the department to submit a transition plan to Congress that provided for the termination of OST within 2 years. And that plan was supposed to be advisory only, but I guess I would note that the department has never done that. They've never submitted such a plan, which is really intended to give a roadmap to Indian country about what these functions would look like in other parts of the department. So, in terms of the intent, that's something that just hasn't been done yet that was required by the law. With respect to some of the other comments that have been made, I don't think anyone on the call will really argue that the core OST functions of accounting, investment, reconciliation, and such should remain intact. They're valuable functions and they're needed functions, but as others on the call have mentioned, there are a number of other OST functions that don't fit into that category that, at least on paper, would seem duplicative if they're moved over to the Office of the Assistant Secretary. OST has an external affairs, a congressional affairs division, space management, they handle travel, a lot of administrative overhead that may have made sense when it was a completely separate entity reporting to the secretary, but I wonder how those would be defensible when they're moved under Asia. I can't imagine an office that reports to Asia having their own external affairs division to confer with Congress. So, the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, the National Congress of American Indians, have submitted some very detailed comments last year that I know that you all and Mr. Kaysen has, that identifies those programmatic functions of OST and makes recommendations on where they should go. At broad brush, I think there was about $50 million of their FY 2017 appropriated funds that were recommended to go to other areas of the department, most notably to BIA Trust Services. So I would really direct the folks on the call to look into those comments in looking at how to potentially amend this proposal and reissue it. I guess I would also caution folks about the timing. The deadline for written comments for this proposal is the next month. I have to think that is intended to coincide with some kind of internal deadline for submitting material to OMB for the FY 2019 budget request. I guess what I would caution is that, if the written comments play out like the comments on this call have been, I think the consensus is going to be that Indian country doesn't want to see OST move to Asia fully intact. There's going to be some areas of OST that should go other places. So, under Section 306 of the law, as you know, any cost savings that would result from a function of OST no longer being carried out would need to be identified and provided to TIPIC so that TIPIC can make recommendations on how those funds should be reallocated. So I guess I would just caution folks on the timing. There may be a rush to try and get this consultation done so that you can get detailed stuff into the budget request for 2019, but I think that would be a mistake. I think there needs to be more time here because we don't want an imperfect transition or a duplicative one or one that doesn't really encapsulate what Indian country wanted with ITARA. We don't want that memorialized into this budget request, into future budget requests. Thank you. Thank you. And I did just want to point out, since there's been a number of comments on budgets that, in the past, OPC's budget was, I think, up at 220 million range. With fiscal 18 president's proposed budget, our budget is 119 million, and it's a roughly $19 million cut from the 2017 budget. So we are in definitely a reduced budget environment in OST, and really trying to figure out what is it that we are not going to be doing going forward, and how many people we are not going to have on our payroll, say by the end of 2019, to get to these budget numbers. So it at that. Our budget is drastically reduced from where it is, and that's a struggle for us going forward to figure out how we do what we do with the amount of money that we have.
Well, Jerry, this is Brian again. I think that's why it's important to make sure that this reorg proposal with respect to OST is done right. I appreciate that the budget is not at its peak that it was more than a decade ago, but realistically, with the exception of the beneficiary call center, I think most tribal leaders don't really know what OST does or have don't see them on a day-to-day basis. So, again, I would just direct you to those joint comments that NCI and AT&I provided that the department officials all have, and look at those recommendations going forward. And we look forward to submitting comments and to working with you all on this.
Thanks, Brian. And just for those on the call who don't know, the comments we received from the Atara consultations in 2016 are all up on the OST website, and any comments that come in from this process will be as well. So everything is up there for everybody to take a look at.
Currently, there are no callers in queue. As a reminder, to ask a question or make a comment, please press star 1. Currently, there are no callers in queue. Again, to make a comment, please press star 1.
So this is Jerry Gidner again. We did set the time for this consultation for 1 till 4 Eastern time. We will keep a line open and monitor it in case any latecomers call in. We can have the discussion with them. Unless there's any other comments that people want to make, we would welcome them, but otherwise we'll just be concluding this at 2 o'clock in a minute or so. And you're welcome to stay on and see if somebody else calls in and listen to that discussion. But otherwise, we have nothing else to say at this point, and we thank you for your comments and participating, and we look forward to your written comments and working with you going forward on this proposal. So other than that, in about a minute here, we'll conclude, and we'll stay on the line in case other folks from Indian Country join us, but otherwise we'll be done, and thank you.
to make a comment or ask a question, please press star 1. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please press star 1.